Okay, it is going. Okay, so we're streaming live on Facebook right now. It says at my very top screen. And really quick, I just want to welcome Mr. Richard Fu onto our regular interviews that we've been doing. And Mr. Richard Fu is one of our leadership parents. And he and I have sat down multiple times and talked about leadership because of his line of work. So I guess we'll just start off there. Richard, thank you very much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
And you're welcome. I'm glad to be here and glad to talk about leadership today. So welcome everybody to the talk. Today I'm going to talk about a title called Lead Simply, and a little bit of my background. So I've been working. I hate to say this, maybe I've been working in for about probably close to 40 years. So I look a little. I think I look younger than I am. I turned 60 years old this last December. But I worked for many large corporations. I worked for Nike for 15 years. I worked for an electronics company called Tektronix for 15 years. I worked for McDonald's Corporation in the digital space. I worked for pharmaceutical companies and I worked for oil and gas companies, right? And now I'm working for a consulting company that provides a lot of services. So in my line of work, leadership is always something that's important to do well. And I think through the 40 years of experience, there's a lot of lessons learned and a lot of things that when you go through the trials and tribulations of being a manager and a leader, you learn a lot through those things. But the things that I've learned, I think are applicable to not just for the business side of things, but it's actually applicable to our daily lives and who we are as people and how do we lead people. Sifu and I talked a number of times about leadership and some things, and I actually introduced him to this concept called Lead Simply, and that's what I want to talk to you about today, because I think leadership is one of those things that, for the kids that are listening in too, is that you can go to school and learn a lot about leadership, and there's a lot of things you can learn and go spend a lot of time. But what I'm going to spend some time today and talk about is bringing leadership down to a simple level, a level that is something that if you use some of these key principles I'm going to share with you today, I believe that your leadership of people and how you are successful in even the business world or even school or wherever you're at, I think these lessons will be helpful for that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do something new, a little different. Sifu said I actually I give my background working for Nike and different things. I do slides, but I have actually a video I want to share with you as well. So there's a little bit of testing out the technology. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and go through a few slides. So you may or may not see my face, which is probably okay. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and bring up some a presentation I'm going to share with you. Make sure I can get to it. Okay, here we go. All right, so hopefully everybody, Sifu, can you see my screen?
I can see you. I cannot see the screen just yet. Let me see if I'm going to switch over to gallery view.
It's on the second. It looks like it's on the second screen. Well, no, first screen. I'm sorry, the first screen. Can you still see it or not?
I'm only seeing you. I'm not seeing it. So let's see what happens when I share a screen, and then we'll see if we can follow the same steps.
Hold on. Let me try one thing too. I can do real quick here.
Okay. So screen share. Okay.
You want to try to do it again? Okay.
Yeah. So this is me sharing my screen. Do you see that?
Okay. Yep.
The picture in the background.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's me sharing my screen. That's just putting. That's just clicking on the screen share button at the bottom, the green one. Mm-hmm. So let's see if that works out for you, because you should be enabled to do that.
Okay. Let's try it again. Now, can you see what do you see now?
I just see us, but maybe it's because I'm not in speaker view. Okay, so now I'm in speaker view. I still can't see the screen share, which is strange.
We knew this would happen, right?
All right, well, here, let me do this really quick. I'm gonna switch over to all panelists now. Try to do it right now. Let's see if that changes.
Okay, hold on 1 second. All right, here. Can you see that?
No, unfortunately, it's not sharing. How about that?
Okay.
The tech is usually pretty good. I'm surprised it's not doing it.
Only thing I could think of here real quick is if I can move it to my presentation to a different, hold on 1 second, guys. I'm gonna do this real quick. Okay. Can you see that screen?
I can't see it, Are you, do you have two screens or do you have one screen?
I have two screens.
Let's see, technical difficulties, but that's okay.
Oh, shoot. Okay. One second here. Okay. You cannot see that either, right?
I cannot. No, unfortunately.
Okay, let me see one more thing here. Can I get it on the screen here? My apologies.
Oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. I think it's probably the tech, because right here it says that all panelists can share, and who can start sharing when somebody else is sharing, that's you. So you should be able to share the screen. I think it's the tech.
Got a PowerPoint unknown. That's what I'm thinking about. Hold on one second. Okay, well, let's do this. I don't want to hold up the thing. So maybe what I can do is I can just talk to it, I guess. That might be.
All right, perfect. Let's just talk through it then. But you introduced me to this concept of lead simply, and you've given me a lot of reading material on it that I just kind of flew through. They were quick books, but I really loved them. So why don't you talk a little bit about the concept and what that means and what it means to everyone?
Okay, let's do that. So really, when I think about lead simply, what is really, there's really three words I want you to remember of the whole presentation, and that is model, connect, and involve. Mm-hmm. And what that really means is as a person, as a leader, leading people, as the Sifu's leading the class, or if it's me leading an organization at Nike or whatever it is, it's about your behavior. So it's all about modeling the right behavior you want people to emulate, right? To be like. Right. Mm-hmm. So that behavior that as you come to work or you come to a meeting, as Sifu comes to the class, everybody's looking at him as that leader and looking at how he's acting and what he's doing. And that is really being that role model, that model that he wants everybody to emulate, to be like, because that's that leadership quality of how he holds himself. And that's one of those things that each of us would look up to Sifu, for example, of being that leader. So it's all about how you model your behaviors. That's really one of the first key things. And I think when we talk about leadership too, and this kind of thing, you don't have to be a Sifu to be a good leader, right? Anybody of you guys who are in school, if you're in school and you're in a classroom, it usually takes that one person in the class that stands up and says, I'll take it. I'll be the leader. So leaders don't have to be assigned like a manager, those type of things. Anybody can be a leader. So I really want all the people to know that think about leadership is not always assigned. It's kind of what you are and who you are as a person. And tell you honestly, leadership qualities are really recognized very easily. You can tell in a room, usually when you go in there and somebody takes charge of something, they may not have the title of manager or leader, but you can tell who is usually that person who's standing out and being that leader. But being a leader, as you know, you can be a bad leader or you can be a good leader. So again, it's about those qualities you want to show that you want people to follow, right? So that's number one, is the whole modeling the right behaviors. The second piece is around connection. Mm-hmm. So you need to connect with the people that you're leading, right? It doesn't make sense to be leading a class or leading something, but if you don't have a connection with the people that you're leading, they're not going to follow you because they don't believe what you're doing, right? There's a belief in you as a leader that they want to be connected with. But the leader has to be the person who actually shows that they're open for that connection. And actually, a lot of leaders actually go out of their way to connect with the people, to connect with their teammates, to connect with the ones that they're trying to lead, right? So you can't lead people just because you said, follow me. They will follow you at some point, but they want to be connected with, right? They want to know how they fit within the big picture of what you're leading, what you're trying to do. That's really the important number two message. And the last one is another one that's really important, and that's involve people. And involve people wherever you can. When you lead people and you connect with them, but being involved where they have a stake in it, where they actually be part of the goal that's trying to be accomplished, that creates a real strong bond for the leader and to the overall team trying to accomplish a goal, right? Mm-hmm. So if you don't involve people, they don't feel like they're part of the big picture. They just feel like I'm here, I'm doing my job, I'm doing what you told me to do, Sifu. I told you what you told me to do, Richard. That's my name. But don't feel really connected or involved. I'm kind of not even involved. I'm just doing my job. Well, typically in teams of people that are getting together to solve a problem, the more people that they get involved, right? The more better solutions come out of it. The more they feel connected, they feel part of the bigger picture. And then part of that whole thing and actually the end result of all that is usually a great, a great outcome, right? And so that's really in essence, Lead Simply is around that principle of model, connect, and involve.
Yeah, yeah. And we've spoken a lot about that. And not only that, but you've talked to me about how specifically on involvement and how important that involvement is. And I remember we had a conversation where you looked at me and you said, you look like the type that you go home and you think about everything. You think about this and that you want to make sure everything's okay. It might be better, try this out, to let the instructors go and plan and figure out the solutions themselves that you give them and see how that works for you for a week. And I changed my whole outlook just by that last bit from that conversation that we had. So it really is true. And I think one of my other mentors, I think he's actually on this call right now. He said, people love that which they help create.
Right. That's that involvement part. Right. You feel like you're part of something, right? And I think it just becomes creates a greater sense of team.
Yes.
Right. But it does take a humility from the leader to give up power, right? To know that it's okay to let other people have the idea, right? It doesn't have to just be my idea. Ideas can come from anywhere, right? And so I think that's a part of the humility of a leader, is to have empathy, have humility, to be able to involve others and take, because I also come from a innovation background that, all ideas come from all different places, right? And you need that combination of people's backgrounds, the diversity of thought, diversity of culture, all those things that really become part of that overall success. One of the things that I have a slide in front of me that I was going to share with you is that it's almost like a boss versus a leader, right? Usually when you talk about a boss, if you go to Sifu's class, you go, all right, people come to work with me and I'm a boss, where it's about, I more or less, I inspire fear. Do it faster, get it done, hurry up, I don't care, don't give me your ideas, just get it done. That's a boss. That's not a leader. A leader is one that generates enthusiasm, one that gets people to want to be part of this whole thing, really wants to get their black belt together as a team, those type of things. And I have a little quote here. It says, if your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, you are a leader. So that's really kind of maybe your own little metric, your measurement to find out is, are people feeling inspired around you? Do they share their dreams with you? Are they actually getting more done? Are they more involved? Are they going the extra mile, about loyalty? I can tell you honestly, there are people that if you fear your boss, you're going to be less loyal, and when the time's time to be done with work, you're going to leave. The ones that are more leaders and you say, gosh, we really need to get that done. The people that are more leaders are people that follow those people, are more willing to put in the extra time. They're loyal to the cause, loyal to their leader to get things done. So it really does create a different atmosphere in the workplace or in school or no matter where you're at. It's just, and I would say sometimes when I'm talking about this stuff too, you would say, well, that's kind of common sense. Yeah, that's easy. Sometimes these concepts of doing this they seem like they're easy, but we sometimes fall short and we get stuck in our own rut of how we think we should do it, and we forget about connecting with people, involving others. So it's really, while it is a simple concept of model, connect, involve, that's why I like it, because it's so simple. It's something you need to remind yourself of. Am I doing that? Right? It's a check. It's almost a reflection. As a leader, am I involved in my in your case, are you involving your leaders that work for you? Am I involving the students in a good way that they feel that they're excited about coming to class? So there's a little bit of check and balance as you do to yourself to see if you really are a leader, or you're just being more of a bossy person that just tells people what to do.
Oh, yeah.
There's a big difference there.
Yeah, and not only that, but you're right when you talk about adaptability and when you're able to know and put these into practice, because it's a very different ball game from just saying it and actually watching yourself and seeing yourself and correcting in the process, because
Yeah.
that's always been the hardest for me, and it takes a little bit of time. But the thing is, if you're vigilant of yourself, you can mold yourself to that way. And I think that now we're very grateful for the position that we're in because of everything that's going on outside in our country right now and the lockdowns, that we're able to see that people are still wanting to get their black belts, which is a very, very good sign.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right to say that you've got to be able to look at yourself, but you also got to be able to see how people are responding around you.
Right.
Because if they're uninspired, they're not going to keep going.
Right. There's another concept out there called the Golden Circle from Simon Sinek. It talks about start with why.
Yes.
And it's another thing that maybe the people are listening and have listened to that. But I think that's another part of it. And I think sometimes that concept of start with why and the lead simply concepts are kind of interesting because they kind of melt together. Because the other part of being a part of a leader and to get people to follow you is called, I have a statement here that says, to create an environment in which people understand why we do the things we are engaged in and how we do them, right? So I think it's that we sometimes we get busy and just start doing the things, what we're trying to do. We forget about that people want to believe in something, right? In the case of your course with the Kung Fu, people want to believe, why am I doing this? Well, I'm becoming a black belt, but why do I want to be a black belt? You start with why, and then when you talk about why, about building a good character, to build not only the skills of the self-defense, but also a character of who you are as a person. This is why we do it, right? And then I think when you get people to understand also the why of whatever you're doing, it's so important to get people to be part of something that's bigger, to be connected, involved with, right? You still want to model that behavior, but starting with why and understanding why are we doing this, right? What's the purpose of what we do? That I think is a kind of nice umbrella over the lead simply concept, because now not only do you have the why we're doing it, but now you can talk about how do I now model my behavior to get people to understand how we're going to do it, right? And then, of course, as a leader, you're going to connect and you can involve. And by the way, the leadership, what I'm talking about, this concept is not just for the top guy, right?
Yes.
It's not just for the president of the company. That's why when I teach this and talk about this in companies, it goes all the way through anybody who's leaders of people. This is where it's important. Because the concept doesn't just start at the top. It starts at the top. It can be done there. It's a good example. But Sifu, in your case, if you do it, but the people underneath you don't do it, it falls short.
That's right.
So it really becomes one of those things that you really want to instill the concept of model, connect, involve all the way through your organization, because then it gets down all the way down through all the levels of the people, all the way down in case to the entry student, or in the company down to the lowest level within the organization. People feel it because they see, wow, I can see how my boss is modeling the behaviors and he's connected with me all the time and he knows my name and he involves me and asks me questions about things. What do I think? It just creates a whole different atmosphere. But the only way that happens pervasively or throughout the whole group is that you have to create that environment where it's okay to do that, right? And it's okay to be a leader and not to be bossy. It's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay that there are other people in your organization or in your classroom that have an answer that you may not have thought of. And that's okay. That makes sense as far as the whole leadership in that area.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It does. And culture makes the world, if the reason why people are staying is because the culture instills the why, and the culture instills the enthusiasm and the welcome and the involvement, with people helping to volunteer to teach basic classes and, jumping in on these things. And the thing is, what you're saying is right, that these things matter. And the why is at the bottom. Well, why do we do this? Well, because I believe that one of the best things that you can do is achieve a black belt nowadays, because it teaches responsibility. It teaches that focus, the benefits, and the bigger the why for the person, the better the chance that they're going to get their black belt. So I agree with you 100%.
Right. So kind of in summary, I have a slide here that I would have shared with you, but in summary, let me just kind of touch on these things one more time. Maybe answer some questions. So we talk about model, right? It says model the behaviors you want to see, right? So you model the behaviors you want to see. Now within that, there's two things that I have points there. One is peer-to-peer accountability, meaning that if you are engaged, your responsibility is to get others engaged, right? So again, it's kind of keeping everybody, your peer accountable to doing the same thing. So in your case, you make sure that your peers or your, in case of the people that work for you, that those people hold each other accountable. Are checks and balances? Are you? I just noticed you're kind of being kind of bossy. You're not really involved in them to kind of keep everybody accountable to the same philosophy, right?
Exactly.
The other one is around models. Communicate clearly in office. Cascade messages that come from you from across and up and down the organization to your team in a timely manner, right? So make sure communications are going to be a very key thing. I always find that 90%, if not more, percentage of issues that happen in companies, in teams, in schools, is that we don't communicate clearly. We just don't, we're not clear about the objective. We're not clear about what we're trying to do. So people get confused, right? So I think that communicate clearly and often is another key component. Now, when you talk about connect, in a summary, is connect with the people you lead, right? So informally engage with the teams. Don't just talk and ask about work or what they're doing, but get to know your team members and ask about family, about weekends and hobbies. You do that a lot, Sifu. I see that when you come in, you connect with not just the team, but the parents, right? And I think that's a good example. That's a good modeling of that behavior, because that's what it also tells us that is that while we're all trying to get things done, we all have our goals in mind, right? But we care about the person. Because when you have a team of people that you're leading as a leader and everybody cares about each other, that actually becomes what I call a high performing team. It's not that you all have the same mutually accountable objective of getting the black belt and improving yourselves, but you're also learning a lot about the person, right? And how they are. And that becomes a stronger team. When you know me more personally, it becomes a stronger relationship. Next will be provide touch points. When assigning work to people and things you're doing, do it in person. Don't just send an email to people. Try to figure out, again, it's that human touch, I believe, with good leaders. Another term that we use in the business sometimes, and I always joke about it, it says, well, I don't have an MBA, college degree, but I have an MBWA. What's an MBWA? I manage by walking around, by touching people and talking to people. People see me as a leader that cares. A caring leader, people are willing to follow a caring leader any day of the week versus a boss that's bossy and tries to just tells them what to do. It's a caring person has empathy, that leader. And then last, in summary, then is this whole involve piece, right? Involve them as much as possible. Can't involve them in everything. You cannot involve everybody in every decision you make, Sifu. But there are some things that, boy, I really should get some feedback from my team, right? And get their opinion on it, because it may sway me kind of what I'm thinking. So it's about, I call it huddle up, right? Conduct huddles with your team that provide a sense of shared value as we work towards a common goal. And that huddle up, again, it shows that the leader is willing to take lessons from other people to help him kind of craft what he thinks he should go do. But that all decisions are made in consensus. Sometimes the top guy's got to make the call, but it does help to involve others to help me and kind of maybe inform you of other things you may not have known about that would have helped you make a better decision, right? Yeah. And then last is a very important piece, I would say, in all this thing called Lead Simply, and it's probably the most important piece, is empower your teams. What does empower mean? It means to give power that I have to you to make a decision and trust you to make that decision. So it talks about assign those things to people and let them, give people the benefit of the doubt that they can make good decisions. Maybe give them some guidelines, but empower them to do things. Because another thing in business that's really kind of key from a leader's perspective is, how do you go fast? How do you go fast as a business? How do I grow fast as a business? How do I do things at a speed of quality and a speed of business to be a successful company? If all decisions have to be made by one person at the top, all decisions, important decisions, how does that slow down the company? Well, it slows it down a lot because everybody's waiting for that one person to make the decision. As a company, as a group or a team can push decisions down to the lowest possible level where decisions can be made, guess what? The speed of the organization goes fast because you're trusting them with some guidelines. You can make that decision within these guidelines. But if you make the call, I trust you, but make the right call with the right people. Guess how fast the organization, if you have a large organization that's spread across here, instead of one person make a decision to make things happen, now you got 10 people that can make decisions to make things happen. As long as it's within the guidance of the overall plan of what's trying to do as a group, a team or a company or a business, right? So I think that's one of the last, I guess my last point on that would be that involvement in empowering teams always seems to be the one that makes people, it's almost like if you do that one, you, by doing that, you're involving them, you're connecting with them, they're feeling that you trust them. There's a lot of basically byproducts out of empowering people that can be very powerful for the organization.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And I think as of right now, the one that I'm really thinking about for this particular situation that everybody finds himself with is keeping up with connection. I think that that's a very important thing right now
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we are all going through a very same situation. And it's important to still that we have this technology now
yeah,
to
yeah.
connect with families and friends and with team members. And one of the things that was really fun is this last staff meeting that we do, because we do our staff meeting every single Monday. We sat down and I looked at my guys and I said, okay, guys, so we need to figure out some form of team building right now because we really need to be able to still do some team building, some
Yeah,
interaction with each other. And they said, okay. And so we sat down and we were like, okay, well, what do we have? Well, we don't have any video game consoles that are the same.
yeah,
We don't have, we can't be doing any martial arts right now for social distancing's sake so that we can
yeah,
all stay healthy. But we do have movies. So what we can do is we can all go, let's figure out what we can do. And then Mr. Harrison, well, the IMDb has 100 lists of the best movies. Let's all watch one movie a week and let's talk about it so that we can
yeah,
have some fun. And that's just
yeah.
trying to work within the parameters of
Right.
what we have. But it's important to keep that connection. That's my main thing. And you can solve it with your people.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that with any obstacle, you just have to put your heads together and think about how to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's about the it's about it's just you have to ask yourself the question: if I have a good relationship through my
Mhm.
connections with another person, can I accomplish more that way versus not having a good relationship and not connecting with somebody? And I think the answer probably would be yes. If I have a good relationship, and not only with my peers, but my boss, with the people that work for me, I
Mhm.
think you would say that that relationship can create a bond and a stronger sense of a lot of things that you can actually accomplish more.
Yes.
And it's very powerful, no matter what. And again, these principles of lead simply, model, connect, involve, and understanding why you do what you do and empowering teams. If you take those simple concepts, and again, just remember model, connect, involve. That's all you have to remember. If you do
Mhm.
those three things, I would guarantee you that you would get different results than if you didn't follow those that simple concept.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, you can model anything around you that you really enjoy and that you want to emulate. I mean, you
Right.
can really look at a quality of this person and say, I like that. What do I need to do that? How can I do that better? Then
Right.
you connect with that person and then you can go from there and involve, right? Everybody wants to be in there. So
Right.
it's a very important concept. And I try to use that same modeling concept with everything I do because
Mm.
we're all looking to do better. And this is a big
Yeah.
part about these interviews is we're
Right.
seeing all these different people and they have a different perspective on leadership. How do we model that leadership to become better leaders?
Right.
So I think modeling is an excellent start for anything.
Cool. All right. Well, that's, I mean, I think that's kind of, I mean, that's a general sense of what I was going to talk about.
Okay, sure,
But
sure. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. You were in Nike for 15 years. What
yeah,
brought you down to SA?
yeah. So I lived in Portland, Oregon. I was born in Minneapolis. I was there till I was 7. Moved to New Orleans till I was 11, just as a kid. But then I moved to Portland, Oregon. I was there for 42 years and worked for a couple. Went to high school there. Went to all schools there. Graduated from high school there, and I worked for a company called Tektronix for 15 years. It was a test and measurement oscilloscope company that made electronic equipment. I was there for 15 years. But then after I left there, I moved in to a company called Nike. I think everybody heard of Nike, right? So I worked there for 15 years and had a great job there, traveled the world, did some stuff for Michael Jordan for his 25-year anniversary is one of my claim to fame I did for his thing. But I ran a lot of big organizations, IT organizations there, and worked in brand marketing, technology, all the Nike.com stuff was my responsibility while I was at Nike. So, but I was there for a while. Then finally left there after 42 years to Chicago to work for another major corporation called McDonald's. The 1990, it wasn't drive-through. I didn't have to work in the drive-through, but I did work at the corporate offices, and I was responsible for digital engagement for all the employees of McDonald's, and also the customers. McDonald's kind of touted there was 69 million customers a day that went to McDonald's, and so I was responsible for digital engagement for them for about a year and a half. And then I was there for a while. Then I got recruited to go to work for a pharmaceutical company in Pittsburgh. And I was there for doing the same kind of thing that I'm talking about here, this model simply, strategic planning, helping IT organizations do what they need to do. And I was there for about 8 months. And again, the guy I worked for there became the CIO, head of IT for a company called Tesoro here in San Antonio. And he brought me with him to be the chief of staff to help him do all the stuff that I'm talking about here is very similar to what I did for Nike, McDonald's, Mylan Pharmaceutical, and then Tesoro. So that what brought me to work in San Antonio. And then of course, Tesoro became Endeavor, and then Endeavor became Marathon through some acquisitions. And so then that became a situation where I lost my job. And then I was out looking for work, and then found a job for a little bit, and then I'm looking again. So it's but that's what brought me to San Antonio, and we love it here. We've been here, I would say, this month has been 5 years, and we love it here in San Antonio. Hope to stay, job willing, and so yeah, that's what brought me here. And we're very happy that we found Sifu in his class, and Christopher has in the background has shined, and he's growing up to be a great little future black belt and beyond kid. And so we're very happy that we're here and made the relationships that we've made so far in being here for 5 years.
Well, that's been really wonderful. And not only that, but I mean, it sounds like you've gotten a chance to work with huge companies on these very simple models. And I think what happens with a lot of people is they don't want to take the leadership role because the responsibility that comes with it, and it can overwhelm. But when you have basic concepts, it's just a matter of stepping into those concepts and applying it. Would you say that that's probably the best way to go about it?
Yeah, exactly. I think you just have to embrace it and and figure out. I think what happens though in a lot of companies, people become managers by title, but they never get training on what it means to be a good manager. And so I would say though, you just have to jump in, and sometimes what I do in training people and helping people understand it, it's kind of been powerful because people, when they start looking at it, go, wow, that's just so simple. Those three things that can make a big difference. So I think sometimes what happens is people get so hung up into the mechanics of being a manager and doing this and doing that and getting the job done, which is all right, but they have to get the job done. But forgetting that the people side of things, right? It's not just about getting the last widget out the door, about that. There is about a lot of pressure to do that. But how do you do it? So Lead Simply, where I love it for people to learn about it, it's not the what, it's the how. How do I manage? Not what I manage, what I output. It's the people, and how do I do that to get the best out of my staff and feeling good about the work they do. But I would say, I would say, unfortunately, it doesn't come naturally for a lot of people. And that's why I like the concept, because it's a reminder. And that's why the book is so simple to read. There's a lot of cards you put up there that just model, connect, involve, and then reminding yourself that's, if I follow those things, that I can be a very successful leader.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I've noticed is, once you take that first step and you start to get involved, like you were saying, once the involvement is there with you, and then you start to connect with other people and you start to see what works and what doesn't, and you want to take that and embody that, and you take your steps with that, then it becomes a part of you regularly over time.
Right.
And one day you're just in that position and you're going, and you realize, how did I get here? Well, it was one step at a time. And I think that simplifying it like you're doing it, making it easy, because we've talked about this before. You say, hey, listen, I think that when you communicate, you say a lot of big words. If you probably cut it down a little bit to things that people can understand, as the great Denzel says, talk to me like I was 5 years old, just break it down this way,
Yeah.
then you will probably get more engagement out of that. And I said, oh, yes, I agree. And so now what I do is I say the big word and then I translate what that
No,
means.
exactly, and that's okay because that helps people learn what that big word meant, right? But you're right. I mean, if you want to write a successful book, you don't write it at a PhD level. You write it at eighth grade level, so everybody can understand it. And honestly, I would say being working in the field for 40 years, I would just say to everybody, right, is that, and we all know this as well. The simpler the idea, the better, right? And
Yes.
sometimes we make things so complex. We use a big word to make maybe to make people think that we know big words,
Mm-hmm.
but if people don't understand what you're saying, you've lost them. And if you
Mm-hmm.
lose them in the communication, then you actually have failed, right? To be a good communicator or an
Yeah.
orator, right? You need to be able to get that message across. And I would just say that a lot of times it's just truly the simple things. And sometimes business can be complex in some areas and some things that are you trying to do. But I would say when you're managing people, if you
Mm-hmm.
just keep it simple, maybe it's lead simply, it's keep it simply, right? We always, keep it simple, something, right? We always
Yeah.
talk about that, right? And I would say that is just the kind of the mantra here about, and there you go with the mantra, right? They use the word maybe people don't know, but the whole concept here of adopting those that kind of thing can really just be a powerful thing for leaders to do. But I think to your point, I remember I was going to say something. We talked about making it, was it like second nature, right? And so
Yeah.
I was at Nike. One of the things that I was responsible for was called enterprise collaboration.
Okay.
I spoke at some conferences about how do you do conferences, right? Or collaboration in a company. And
Mm-hmm.
someone asked, I was in a panel interview. Someone says, "Well, how do you know when you're successful in this whole collaboration thing?" Well, the answer was, "Well, when we don't have to have a seminar or a conference to talk about it, is when we
Mm-hmm.
know we're successful, right?" So same thing like with Lead Simply. It's a concept you can learn in things of that nature, and it's good. But when it really becomes powerful is when you don't think about it. It's just you just do it. You just
Mm-hmm.
automatically connect with people. You are automatically involved with people. You don't have to have it a sign on the wall that tells you to remind you to do it, but it
Yeah.
becomes second nature. That's when you know you've arrived, when you've actually become successful. Is you know, it's like in black belt when you do all your moves, right? At some point right now you're focusing on how do I do the move, how do I do
Mm-hmm.
it in the right way. But when you're successful is when you can do it in your sleep and you don't have to think about it. It's automatic,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So it's a very similar concept of your techniques. What you do for kung fu is what you do in real life and how you manage people. When it becomes natural and you don't have to think about it, it's just how you operate. That's when you know you've been successful.
Oh yeah, and I agree with you. And what you're saying, it makes 100% sense to me. And I feel that some people are say, yeah, but everybody says that. No, no, no. When you practice it, it does become second nature. And anybody who is a martial artist or anybody who is in a role, a leadership role, has run into this. And I remember when I was first learning how to do my Buji form, and I was doing the elbows for hours, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And one night I woke myself up because I elbowed the bed because I was doing it so many times. And I was like, well, I guess I got it. So, but
Yeah,
the thing is that you have to put that time in, and you have a basic foundation to put that time in. And you could expand on each one of those a little bit, but once you have the foundation down,
yeah,
that's your time to explore and go with it and see what comes up. And I think that a lot of people just think about all that they have to do instead of just starting off and focusing
yeah,
on these things and then going through. So,
exactly.
I think you're absolutely right. And you've taught them to a lot of people, and it sounds like the simpler, the better. And how was the trickle down effect? So did you start with everybody? Did you start with the people at the top? Did it come on
Yeah,
down? How did you
yeah,
start off with it?
question. Yeah, good question. Now we start to be effective. There's two ways of really doing it, but one of the most effective ways first is to start at the top. You want the leadership, right, to
Mm,
really believe in the concept because they are, when we talk about model the behavior, right, it doesn't
mm,
do any good if I have people at a lower level modeling behaviors. And you could still get some success down there. But if the
yeah.
top guy or the top level of the organizations model bad behaviors and they're not connecting with the people and you're not involving people, it becomes half baked, right? It doesn't become very successful.
Mm,
So if people are truly are looking, and by the way, so I think all of us, we always look at our leaders, what they're doing, how are they acting, and what's making them successful. So, and they may be some bad behaviors going on. So
Mhm.
I always tell the leadership, that's why I try to get the leadership at the top to buy into the concept and to
Mhm.
hold themselves accountable that they're doing it and pushing it down through their organization. I
Yes.
believe that's probably, if I were to pick bottom up or top down, I would say top down is probably, I would pick that versus bottom up. But,
Mhm.
but another way of doing it though, that I've always been successful of too, is a little bit of a combination. Is top down and bottom up, middle management and middle leaders, the leaders at the lower level and top, to try to get it so that kind of comes to, they meet each other in the middle. But if you
Right.
do the bottom and not the top, you're going to have mixed results. If you do the top, but it doesn't push all the way down to the bottom, you don't tell people this is what we expect of our leaders, then it doesn't work. But that's why I think when leaders at the top do it and they buy into it and they create an expectation of their leadership, that they say, this is how we need to operate for the culture of our group. I
Mhm.
want people, I want you to, and I'm going to, by the way, we've done this before too. We'd actually would do what's called skip level
Mhm.
interviews with our organization. I would go down to the lowest level organization. I said, have you heard about this model, connect, involve stuff? And if they
Mhm.
say no, then I go back to the leader and say, what's going on? Why are you not doing it?
Mhm.
So but there are some checks and balances, because not all leaders of people will buy into it, right? But
Mhm.
if you set the expectation at the top that this is how we want to operate, this is a culture we have. When you bring a new person from the outside, you indoctrinate them a little bit as, hey, we really believe in this model, connect, involve, lead simply concept. And we expect our leaders to follow this simple methodology. Then it
Mhm.
becomes, again, over time, it can then become the culture. That's just how, not just how you operate as a leader, that's how everybody in an organization operates as a team.
Mhm.
That's when you start to really get power of the organization. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think that's good that you start from the top and the bottom and you meet in the middle, because
Yeah.
you do need a check and balance, and nothing's ever perfect, and you kind of
No.
have to realize that, but you have to be monitoring to the point that you can, to where it's not micromanaging, but it's leading people to the right, to the model, right, leading them. But it's a balancing act, like you said, checks and balances. So that's a really good piece of advice, to start from the top and the bottom at the same time when you have a large group. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, Mr. Fu, you and I can talk about these things for hours right here, and I really love it. But let's see if we can open up. We've got some panelists or some people here, guys. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Fu right here? Just go to the Q&A section right over here. And if you're on Facebook and you happen to be watching, I'm monitoring it with my other computer. So if you all want to ask a question, I will be able to see it on the Facebook Live. Let me see if I can do that really
Yeah.
quick.
Is there one question now? Looks like there's one question. Howie?
Oh, there is. I can't see it for some reason. I think
Oh,
it's
I
glitched.
can. I can from Howie.
So if you can see it, go for it. I think my internet's kind of frozen up.
Okay, good. I'll read it. It says, Richard, I love your model connect involve, but what are some ways you inspire people to step up and want to lead,
Mhm.
especially when there is a perceived safety in being a follower or laying low? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. No, that's true. I think yeah, inspire people to step up. Again, I think I'll say it a couple of ways. I think because the old way of being a leader, right? Of not having a concept. Because I think when you share with people, to be a good leader, it's really this model, connect, involve concept. You take the mystery out of being a leader, right? It doesn't be you have to go to some. I didn't go to a 6 week course on. I don't know if I can do it, or whatever. I mean, there are going to be people that are going to be born leaders, right? They're just going to be the ones that are going to go out there. The ones that have been a little bit more, they're in a leadership role, but they're afraid of it a little bit. I
Mhm.
think what happens is through this concept, it takes out the mystique a little bit. It makes it easier to understand the concept of how you can be a good leader, and how do you involve people, can connect with people. So I think it's that I think that making it simpler, I think, and maybe break the barrier and inspire people a little bit to want to be that leader that they can be. Um, because I do think you're right. I think there are people that and it will be a personality trait. Some people just don't want to step out of their comfort zone, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think to what Sifa was mentioning too, when you look at an organization, the concept is simple, but people are complicated.
Mhm.
And people come from different fears of what, they may have reached out, try to do something, and then their leader above them has pushed them down or made them ridiculed them a little bit on something of that nature. So I think, again, it's not cookie cutter. There are people involved, and you have to kind of think about how do you do it in a way. But I think if they're encouraged and they have a simple concept to learn and to practice, I think they're probably going to be able to be more successful than not. I hope that answers that question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And really, one of the things is, like we talked about, the want, right? Having them have this want to do it. If that jumps in, it really does help. There's a lot of factors. It's complicated. Like you said, people in situations can be really tricky,
Right.
but there's usually a time in people's lives where they see that they either can step up or they step back. And I think you've really focused on a good model for the people to take away the mystique in order to step up. And
Right.
I think that's important. Yeah. So are there any other questions there?
Yeah, I have another question here from Daniel.
Okay.
And he says, hello, Richard. As a good leader, how do you adapt to different ideas stemming from other team members, even if your idea is just as good?
My God.
Well, I mean, the bad way, the bad modeling would be, I'm the leader, it's my idea. It doesn't matter. Just go with my idea. No, I think it is. This kind of goes to this whole innovation thing. That was, you kind of go. We always hear the statement, all ideas are good ideas. Let's put them all on the table. I think when something happens like that, as a leader, you do listen to the idea. You always will take input from everybody, and I think you do set the stage. I would say part of being successful in this kind of question is that it is about how you set up the environment, right? To be open to ideas, right? So if you create an environment that all ideas are good ideas, let's put them on the table. I think what you do is you look at them, and especially if it's in a group situation, you look at all the ideas, and then even as a team, you look at it and you start creating some criteria. How do we measure what is the best idea? What are the different criteria we would use? Is it based on a better financial return, a better strategic alignment with what we're trying to do, whatever it is? So that way, when you go through the ideas and you filter them and you look at them, you can maybe look at those ideas not from an emotional standpoint, my idea is better than your idea, but from a fact-based point of view. So that way, I think that can become more powerful, because then when you make decisions, that let's say that other person's idea was as good or maybe it was better, but you're not going to base it on emotion that I want my idea because it's my idea. It's based on facts, on different things that you agreed as a group. What is a mutually accountable objective we're trying to accomplish? What are those criteria by which we're going to make a decision for the best idea? Because then you kind of hopefully take, again, what I would try to do in that kind of situation is take the emotion out of the decision making and make it more of a facts-based decision on making the right call. And if my idea is better than that other person's idea or as good as one, then we balance it out and we say, well, let's see which way, and maybe take a vote, right? But again, as a leader, you have to be open to not always having the idea. You have to be open time with that. I have to say, it makes them feel like, right? And in a job situation, that it can be leader though would open it up and create criteria by which the best decision would be chosen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you got to put yourself aside. That's the best thing, remove yourself from that position. You have to be able to listen to that. And that was something I had a lot of trouble when I first started off. And I think that was a great question to ask, Daniel. And the ideas do need to come from all around. You never know, man. You might get something fantastic if you just have an environment of listening.
Well, and one thing that comes out of ideas, which the leader can do in this case, is that the best ideas sometimes are when you mash up two different ideas together that creates where the 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 5, right? Because, oh, wow, I didn't think about that. But if we take your idea and my idea and we merge it together, well, so guess what? Both people feel good about it because we're taking bits of each other's. But guess what? The end result could even be a bigger idea that solves a problem, right? So that is another way of looking at it, where you can create win-wins, not always it's a win-lose type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful way to look at it. Very good. Okay. And then are there any other questions there, Mr. Fu, that you can see?
No, that was it from Daniel, and I think
That's two.
Howie,
Okay.
that was it right there. Yeah.
Excellent. If anybody wants to ask any other questions, I'm keeping an eye on my Facebook right now. It looks like my Seeing is watching us right now. Glenn, who's going to be doing an interview this Friday, which
Okay.
is going to be fun. All right, I like it. But if let's just do a going once, going twice. And so, is there anything in the chat by any chance? Because if my Q&A is messed
Nope.
up.
Okay. Daniel was the only one in the chat, and I was nothing more in the Q&A. So this those two. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that came out really well. So, Mr. Fu, from all of us here at Studio Martial Arts, including yourself, thank you very much, very much for coming in and doing the interview, because I think we've learned a lot about making sure to start off from a very simple spot and then grow in terms of leadership. And I think that taking away the whole mystique of it is a very good place to start for any up and coming leaders, which is what we try to do. And it was wonderful. Thank you very much for answering the questions. People that ask questions, thank you all very much. I think Mr. Daniel is going to end up getting the stripe for that one. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, I always give out stripes for the best questions, so I'll make sure to get that one to Daniel. But Mr. Fu, thank you very much for being on tonight. And we've got to do this again sometime. Who knows? Maybe we'll get another chance before we open back up.
Okay, sounds good. There's other topics we can talk about for sure.
Yeah, but I appreciate it. Okay. Well, I hope you have a good night, and let us know if there's anything we can do. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.